Hey, welcome back to my series on learning Maya for beginners. This is where we left off last time we were working. We unfolded the UVs to a cube. We did not technically have to do this. If you just create a cube, it'll already have UVs that basically work. But I wanted to show at the most basic level how you can use the UV cut and sew tool, the 3D cut and sew tool, to unfold or unwrap UVs that you can actually use. So to finish this out, we need to export this as a template so that we can bring this into another software and start adding some texture onto this. Now today I'm just going to use Photoshop for this, but there are so many different things that you can do at this point. A lot of people are going to use Substance Painter, so once you've created your UV maps, you'll go into Substance Painter, and that's a great program where you can basically paint directly onto the model, and then based on where you're painting on the model, it will apply that as a texture map over here. So I'm just going to go old school and just bring this into Photoshop and go from there. So what you'll need to do is click on this little camera icon. This is your UV snapshot. And when I do this, pick a location to save this. For some reason, I found that mine doesn't update to where I have my project set, and I usually have to click Browse to save that. So I always put this inside the Source Images folder of whatever project I'm working on. I'm going to go with JPEG today. Pick whatever is going to work best for your project, and I'll stick with this 2048 by 2048. Now, just so you know, this is the pixel values of how big your ultimate map, when you bring it back in, is potentially going to be. So you want to think about how large or small you need it to be for a project. Sometimes you do have to go smaller than this if it's for a mobile app or something, and sometimes you might be able to go bigger. Now, down here where it says U and V, this is what we're seeing in this grid right here. When we see 0 to 1 and 0 to 1, this 1, 1 is indicating that we're going to get this square. So in my last video, I talked about keeping all your UVs in this one grid, and that's just because it starts getting more complex when you add more. You'll see I've got a range option, so I could do more, but depending on what software you're bringing it into, it's just going to complicate it. So only do that if you know what you're doing. So then you just hit apply and close. I already did this. And then we can open this up in Photoshop. So this is what it looks like when it saves it out. Now remember, this is just a template. This is a guide so that we know where to put stuff. So I'm going to create a new layer in Photoshop, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about using Photoshop. That's something that you can look into in some other videos. I'm going to just, in my new layer, paint bucket the whole thing white. You'll see in my layers, if I turn my guide back on, that's now invisible. So we'll just drop down the opacity, because I just want to know where I'm going to be placing things. So for the purpose of this one, I'm just going to go with a super simple brush. And let's just say that we were going to create, we're going to go real fast here, all these dots for a dice. And these are going to look crooked, and I apologize. So I've almost got these done. I'm going to just forget the 6 here, and just to show you, let's assume we're going to get another color here, and I'm just going to paint outside the lines. So the reason that we want this guide, we don't need this anymore. Now that I've painted a texture, I can put this to full opacity, and this is what my diffuse map, or my, I always refer to this as kind of the base colors, is going to look like. So I've gone outside the lines here, and ultimately what this is going to do back in Photoshop is just, or sorry, back in Maya, it's just going to cut these off. Anything that's outside of our template just won't exist. So now that I have white to represent the dice color, these black dots, and this weird green zigzag, I need to save this out, and then we're going to attach it back in Maya. So I will save this and be back to Maya. Okay, so I saved that out as a JPEG. Once again, you will probably use different file types depending on what company you end up working for, or what you need them to be, if you need them to be really small files or more high quality files, but I just went with JPEG. Now we're not actually going to use our UV editing mode to attach the texture, because if we remember, if we're doing any shaders or texturing work, it should be done in this Hypershade window. So I'm going to open up Hypershade. We'll just do an Arnold shader, AiStandardSurface. If this is new to you, there are some videos that kind of show this basic process of using these shaders that you can check out. So I'm going to go to my base weight and just increase this. Let's give this a name. Call this Dice Diffuse Color. Now, for the base, this is, you'll see diffuse roughness is kind of down here. Diffuse is often a word that you're going to see associated with this base, kind of the flat, matte, main color of something. Right now, it's just set to white, and we want to change this. So we want this to be the file colors, which was the black, white, and green for mine. So I'm going to go into this checkerboard door. This is going to pull up your render node options, and we want to choose file. Once we do that, you'll see that the file node, the out color, is plugging into our base color. And we have the options for our file. So I just need to click on this and attach the file. Okay, so I've attached the file, and you'll see this is now showing up over here. I'm going to go back to my main shader because you do still have options to change some of the other settings. Right now I've got specular highlights on here. If I wanted to, I could increase this specular roughness so that it is more of a matte color. So maybe I'm going to pick something that's got a little bit of a shine to it, but maybe not quite as glossy. And lastly, we just need to attach this. So I'm going to close this, hold right click over my object to assign existing material, and use this dice. Now, it's not actually showing up right now in either view. In this view, you just need to make sure that this icon is checked, and you'll see that the map is now on. And over here, you just press, with the mouse hovering over your workspace, just press 6, and that will turn on this shaded display with textures. So you'll see right here where this cuts off, that is cutting off as expected. And everything textured okay. So that is quickly how you attach a map that you have created. This is going to be the same thing if you do bring it into something like Substance Painter, or even just go find diffuse textures on the internet. If you're plugging them back in, you want to make sure that your UVs are laid out in a way where you know exactly what is showing up where, so that you don't get weird seams. My green, for example, is a really awful seam because the screen is not wrapping around onto these other faces. It's just kind of cutting off awkwardly. So if you had bricks or something like that, this seam would be pretty awful. So you're thinking about all that, and then you're exporting your diffuse maps and then putting them into Hypershade. And ultimately, that is how you attach these textures. So I will see you next video.